Hi, this is Fred Chapman back again for another Selfie Stick interview, and very happy to be joined by Caroline Jarvis for this one. Thanks for coming out on this hike up to this pretty amazing
Well, it's a
location.
real chore, you know. It's such a horrible day, beautiful
so
mountains.
just give a bit of the view
yeah.
that we got in the background. So, Caroline, you're a animator at DHX at the moment.
Yeah,
What have
that's
you
right.
been working on recently?
Right now I'm working on Peabody and Sherman, the Netflix series.
Yeah.
That DreamWorks is also producing. Yeah, I've worked on stuff like My Little Ponies and other cartoons for television.
Party! Let's get some ladies up in here.
You're invited, dabba doo da da, to a party, doo da da dee da, by the council to stop supervillains tonight. You're invited, dabba doo da da.
What about the doomsday device?
I made it from radio parts to thief, beep, 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 beep,
Ow!
beep.
You okay?
No, brainer.
Darwin's beard!
Shatner's wig!
Come back! Out of my way! No, I'm not too from. Change of plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's great to interview you and have a bit of a contrast from the visual effects and feature film heavy stuff that we've been doing recently and get a bit of balance in there.
Cool, thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
So, how did you get into animation?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's by luck or misfortune. No, just joking. Actually, when I was in high school, there was only about 10% women in the IT sector. So one of the local colleges tried to get a bunch of women on a bus to show them what kind of IT field they had at their college. And animation was one of the programs they had. And one of the guys said, "Oh, I have an internship with Disney," and he was showing me all this animation he was flipping, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. And I didn't really know real people made animation. It could have been a unicorn, you know, like out somewhere else. I never imagined I'd actually know people who animated on big feature films and television series. So it's been an amazing journey so far.
So, what do you enjoy most about the whole process?
I really think when you actually learn more when you're working on challenging projects, that you actually are learning how to draw better, or you have people beside you who are doing incredible things with their art and they're teaching you along the way. And I just love collaborating with artists and just seeing what everybody's doing. Vancouver's such a great city for that, because there's people working on amazing shows and some of the best projects in the world, and some of the most talented people are here. So there's always a ton of inspiration.
Are there any downsides to animation?
Well, it depends what your attitude is, I suppose, because I found that I've had a ton of peaks and valleys in my career.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's with tax credit changing and no longer work in the city you're in. There's always different ups and downs with every project. And if you're unhappy in the job that you have, or if you're not feeling that inspired, maybe look inside yourself and say, like, oh, like, have you been writing in your spare time, or have you been drawing? Have you been animating in your spare time? Like, maybe there's something else that you could be doing with your career that's actually will help you choose a better path, a more inspiring path along the way, so it's more satisfying.
So, what works for you? What keeps you inspired and keeps you passionate about it?
You know, almost every day at lunch, I go for walks with some of my friends that I work with, and we're always talking about art and different projects we want to work on. I have some friends that we get together and draw, you know, and sometimes just seeing different artists put their art up online, or collaborating on different projects with other people. It's just nice to have the conversation. And I find when you actually pay attention to what all your friends and colleagues are doing, then you're like, oh, like I could be doing something too, and you just feel inspired and motivated.
Ideas and inspiration off each other.
Yeah, but I also find too, just having days in the mountains when you're just take a break from the stress of production, because so many people get burnt out in production. And if you actually just take a time to like enjoy nature and just like you just have like, look at this beautiful scenery we have right here. There's mountains behind us. We're surrounded by snow, and it's like these are my happiest days. And if you actually take the time to do other things in your spare time that have nothing to do with the industry, that you just feel passionate about. I feel like you can come to work and focus and have a happy day. You can feel inspired and just do a much better job than if you're just constantly working like 14-hour days and like stressing out that you're not getting ahead in life or you're not making enough money.
You monkeys!
You just have to find those things that make your heart happy, That's what you just have to do.
So how do you balance that? Because you've always seemed to have so much energy. How do you balance that with sitting still, actually doing the work for so long?
Well, I try and incorporate exercise into my life every day. Like I either go to yoga or we have at work we actually have a boot camp. There's a couple guys who torture us with circuit training, and it's really great. Like if you do exercise, I find at lunchtime, then I'm much more focused in the afternoon. And if you just get some quiet time in the night to be creative or do something you love, then I find that stuff just re-energizes yourself.
And other than you've already packed this full of a lot of advice how to keep the passion going and keep balance. Do you have any particular interest for people wanting to get into the industry or who are in the industry who want to move up and become more established?
Yeah, well, I mean, it really just depends what you want to do, because so many kids, they start out and they're like, oh man, I have to draw like Disney characters like a certain way. And I feel like if you're passionate about animation, just watch a lot, try it yourself. If you want to go to animation school, there's a ton of schools out there. Just do your research and, don't get discouraged. I've been in the industry for 10 years and I just keep thinking about all the people I get to work with every day. I mean, they're just like a family to me. I mean, my directors and my producer are like my dad and my big brothers who are like saying butt jokes all day. And then I have inappropriate brothers working side by side with me every day. And you're just like, you just go into work and you have a laugh and you enjoy it, and you get to work on amazing projects that, and when your best friend's kids are like, oh, you're so cool because like I love this show, and it's just, some shows will make a difference in people's lives, and you really just have to look at what kind of goals you have in your life. Want to move up and they want to become storyboard artists and directors and things like that, but don't be scared to do those jobs at the bottom that teach you so much.
Don't restrict yourself,
exactly,
but also keep your ambition under control. So sometimes it takes a while to get where you want to be, and just do the work, and enjoy the process.
There's very few directors who are straight out of school directors, and there's so many students who are like, that's what I want to do, I want to direct. But I mean, you need to learn all the other departments first, all their jobs, all their roles, how you can be good at all of it and learn from other people. And don't be afraid to ask questions. What I've learned from going to talks with some of these big like Disney, Pixar guys is that, they're inventing things as they go along.
You never know who can open different doors for you and suggest different avenues. So and if you don't know where you want to go, then that's fine just enjoy
and
the process of getting there.
Meet as many people as possible in this industry too, because your network is just as valuable as your talent. There's so many times you just go for a beer with like some people you haven't seen in a couple months. They're like, you would be perfect for the project, why don't you like apply? And you might have been out of work for a few months, or you just have to talk to people.
Dance break! Give it to me! Tiki zoom.
How does realism factor into stylized animation, cartoon type animation?
Well, it's interesting because there's tons of rules of how characters can move, but then every rule that they tell us, the next episode, they're like, no, you can break it. So it's really a matter of understanding how the characters move, when they can be wild and when they have to just tone down to be on model. So a lot of it's practice, trial and error. Sometimes you hear the audio and you can understand that the character's doing crazy stuff, so you can just draw it a little bit crazier. But as far as like realism, you really have to understand anatomy and how it all plays out. You have to understand character expressions. motions, and you have to understand how you can push eyes and mouths and bodies.
Yeah.
And
So you can't just go completely crazy. There are some
there's-
boundaries that you've got to work within.
absolutely, like if say you have a character who's walking, somebody who's walking coming from a funeral is going to walk differently than somebody who just had the best news of their life, you know. And so you have to understand the basic principles of the realism behind why people walk certain ways, and if you have a rabbit walking this way, you have to incorporate those rules of realism to actually make these characters
So you
move.
look for the specific in a particular type of movement or in a particular type of anatomy. You look for specific patterns of movement that you can then exaggerate.
Exactly, but it's also personality too, because two people could experience the exact same event, but if somebody's very extroverted and very loves, say you're mountain climbing, like right here, some people think it's torturous. Why would anybody do it, And another person like me is like, whoa, we're on top of a mountain, we're having fun, this is great, I love snow, oh my God, there's snow in Vancouver, And so you have like the different kind of attitudes that come along with it. And so you really have to understand the personality of your character. You have to understand how the body mechanics work with the personality. So, I mean, whether you're doing a realistic animation or a cartoony, you really have to understand all of that before you even think about style and things like that. So it's...
And then you got to factor in the storytelling.
Exactly. And what does the audio sound like? What's the pitch of when are the inflexes happening and in the audio? So there's lots to think about. So it's not just like, oh cool, we can just draw this all designy and everything. You have to really understand the character, the motivation behind the character, and how characters move in that kind of situation too.
Now the tough one, the really tough one, the final question.
Final answer.
What's your favourite animated character?
Oh, Roger Rabbit. Yeah,
Okay.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
No delay there.
No, he's amazing. The way they
Yeah.
pushed him, and it's all on paper. Like, if you make a mistake, you have to redraw that, the whole character, or sometimes they just have different body parts on different pages. But man, like, understanding the timing and having to listen through that track over and over and over. We're so spoiled with programs like Flash that it's just all in there for you. There you can do formulas, lots of cheats and everything. Then you, have to understand how to draw and do proper character rotations. You have to understand,
It's pretty amazing.
there's so
technical
many,
feat as well as the creative one.
And the backgrounds, there's so many crazy perspective stuff happening, and those guys are legends. I love Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I wish there was more of that stuff. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And, thanks for joining us, folks, and stay tuned for more interviews like these, maybe even more interviews on top of mountains. Coming soon.